Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin with the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
Doing great. How you doing, Eric?
Doing fantastic. What have you been keeping yourself busy with?
Yeah,
right.
I think 30 this year so far. But
yeah, it's been ridiculously hot in the Northeast, and I think most of the country has had just so many heat waves this summer.
Yeah. So, but we'll be complaining about it in 4 or 5 months when there's snow on the ground. So.
Right. Well, I found, you know how Facebook periodically says, these were your posts from a year ago or 2 years ago. Few years ago, I posted at this time of year a picture of just the sun beating down, and it said today in Connecticut. And then next to it, it was a picture of a blizzard, and it said tomorrow in Connecticut.
There you go.
And that's, that's what we have.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to be talking today. Let's face it, no matter what business you're in, you're not the only one in it. And it's important that you be able to stand out from your competitors. So we're going to be talking about different ways to differentiate yourself and to help you stand out in the crowd. Let's face it, nobody succeeds by fitting in with the crowd. You want to be noticed. You want to be standing out. So today we're going to talk about differentiation and how you can make yourself different from your competitors. And one of the absolute simplest ways to differentiate yourself is by choosing a narrow target audience. You can specialize in who you're helping. And it's, there are loads of businesses that do this. Marketing companies especially do this all the time. The basics of marketing are the same no matter what industry you're doing, no matter what kind of company you're working with. But if you specialize, I know a marketing company that specializes in professional services businesses, doctors, lawyers, things like that. I know marketing companies that specialize in manufacturing companies. And by making yourself an expert in that industry, that's one way of standing out, because you're not offering a general service to everybody. You're offering a very specific set of expertise to a specific niche audience.
Yeah, and these days, where here we've been dealing with COVID for 5+ months now, that market niche that may have been formerly local has expanded virtually everywhere. And really one of your challenges, but one of your opportunities, is to identify opportunities for new markets, expanding to new markets, if your niche is able to do that, and identify them online, and then use the new tools that we have to approach them and market to them, very specifically. So that is a new opportunity in the obstacles that we are facing right now as far as being physically distanced.
Absolutely. Because we've been doing so much communicating online, it's no longer necessary to limit yourself to a local, 2-mile, 4-mile, 10-mile radius, whatever it is that you felt comfortable with. Now, that's not to say you can't focus on that. That's another way of differentiating yourself. If you are hyper local, you are working on just this specific metro area, and that's a way to say, well, I am an expert in this area. I can get people to your retail location, your office, depending on what kind of business it is. So you can, the Modern Observer Group actually started out differentiating itself by being a national company. We weren't specific to a local area, which many of our competitors were. By the same token, we didn't specify a specific industry because, again, many of our competitors were focused on a specific industry. And we felt by taking best practices from different industries, that differentiated us from our competitors. So it goes both ways. You can differentiate yourself by being very specific or by being very broad, depending on how your industry works.
Yeah, and also coming up with a very specific system of doing things is really, really important, which is something that you perfected a long time ago as far as reaching people using the internet, but as far as developing basically the systems that every business needs in one way or another, and really, really simplifying them so that people just know what the points are, the main points, without getting into the details. That's really, really important. And I know the last podcast that we did was on your book, The Business Way, but that book itself kind of is a culmination of everything that you teach people. And it's a very, very good reference book to do that. And those elements that we talked about um, that all businesses need to have are really, really important. You know, we talked about mindset, focus, opportunities. Communications is so, so important these days. And then innovation, evaluation. I mean, the bottom line is things don't stay still. And you hit on all those points there, and there are specific things, and it doesn't matter whether you're reading your book or probably books from a zillion other consultants out there. They're similarly talking about the same things, but you have it really, really focused on, and that's really, really important. I mean, communications, innovation, evaluation right now, and being able to roll with what's going on and improve are so, so important. And the bottom line is if you want to keep up and surpass your competition, you got to be working on those things all the time.
Yes, having a specific process that is unique to your business is a great way to differentiate yourself. We did it with the Biznetics system. There are tons of companies that have created their own traffic funnels, sales techniques, and these individualized processes make these companies stand out. Because when someone asks you, well, what makes you different from everybody else, you can point to that process and say, this is the way we do things. We developed this here, and it is different from anybody else, and we can prove that this works. With our process, we just came out with the book, but it's the culmination of over 10 years of research and implementation so that we can show, yes, look at all of these examples, the process works. So by having a process for your company on how you do things, that's a great way to differentiate yourself.
Yeah, one of the elements that I just said stands out to me, both within your own company, but for the outside world, is communications. And we've talked about communications in various ways as far as authentic brands, communicating to audiences, and so on and so forth. One of the ones that we looked at, I don't know, probably a year ago, was the 7 C's of communication: to be clear, concise, concrete, correct, coherent, complete, and courteous, as far as that goes. But the bottom line is you have to come up with a really, really simplified way to present yourself, where even if you're competing with somebody else, it looks like it's a whole lot easier to work with you and a whole lot more desirable to work with you just because of the way you communicate how you are doing things.
Yes, is so key. You want to express what you do, but you want to make it simple for people. You want people to have that aha moment to go, oh, if I work with this company, this is going to happen. And another key to communications, which a lot of people talk about, but very few companies actually achieve it well, is transparency. You want your client to feel they are part of the decisions, they are part of everything that's going on from the first step. And the way to do that is by being transparent, by showing them every step along the way, and by being honest with them. If something is going to be delayed, you tell them, look, XYZ happened. It's going to delay this part of the process. We expect to have it back on track on X date. Don't make excuses about it. Just be transparent and say, this is what happened. This is how we're solving it. This is when we're back on track. That way, they know what's going on. They feel comfortable with you. And that transparency is another great way to differentiate yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the customer, we talk about networking meetings where everybody's wearing a badge that doesn't have their name on it, but the badge says, "What's in it for me?" And that's really, really important to communicate that right off the bat, because that's what you're catering to. And really, after that, after you're dealing with the customer, what you have to do through communications is a big part of that is listening to them, writing down things so that if something is messed up or something can get better, you have that right in front of you. And then your next step in the book was innovation, which is basically doing new things as a result of that, and evaluation. So all businesses, it's a constant process. If you want to keep ahead of the curve, you got to be constantly innovating new ways to do things. You got to be evaluating what's going on, and then you got to be adjusting as it goes. But the communication piece is huge, not only to explain what you're doing to your clients, but to really understand what their needs are and be listening to them.
And understanding customer needs is possibly the most important thing. And it's a great example looking at what's gone on during the COVID pandemic, because there were a lot of restaurants that shut down, but there were a lot of restaurants that knew their customers were going to stay with them, and they shifted to a takeout model. They shifted to contactless delivery or or contactless pickup. There were restaurants that knew they couldn't bring people in, but they could do the contactless pickup, and they still had their suppliers for their food. So instead of getting the food and making the meals that they usually did, they knew people were afraid to go out food shopping. So they used their food suppliers and they put together grocery boxes that could be, they could, their customers could come up, open their trunk, the contactless drop off just goes right in the trunk. And it was a different business model, but they knew what their customers needed and adapted to meet that need.
Yeah, and they adapted their own business models to do that. Restaurants are a very, very good example, because now that restaurants are able to come back, but at only 50% capacity max, a lot of restaurants cannot run at 50% capacity, hire back all their employees, and make a profit. So a lot of these restaurants, take pizza places for instance, and people that are relied a lot upon takeout anyway, have gone 100% that, just to make ends meet as far as profitability goes, but also to make it easier for their customers out there, because there's a lot of people that are out there that are never going to want to go back to restaurants again because they're going to be paranoid. So I think that the market for restaurants is down for the foreseeable future, and those that can adapt, great. And hopefully some of those people who are in the restaurants can move to other restaurants if they're going out. But it's really, really figuring out the new way to do things is so important.
Right. And that's very big right now also, is being able to adapt to your customer needs and to the requirements that state governments and city governments are putting forward. It's very difficult for restaurants, gyms to do what they were doing under the current restrictions. So they have to be able to adapt, and how they adapt is how they stand out. It's, what services are you still doing? A lot of restaurants came back, but with very limited menus. So if you target, if you're cutting back on what you're serving, but you target the types of foods to what your customer order most often, that helps you stand out. It's like you are now very targeted on this type of cuisine or this type of food, getting it to the people, whether it's through delivery or pickup. It helps create your identity as a more concentrated version of what you were doing before.
Yeah, and with that,
So you can,
going to be a lot more upscale in-home dining in the future because that's what people are going to want to be rather than risking going out to restaurants. So I mean that is a huge potential for certain restaurants out there that do that. But as you mentioned, I mean they have to bear down the menu a bit, just come up with a few really good things that they can do and adapt accordingly.
right. And that specialization's not just for restaurants. You can do that in just about any business. There are tons of insurance brokers out there. And while they all offer a wide range of policies and types of insurance, many of them specialize in specific types. They can specialize in property and casualty. They can specialize in long-term care. It doesn't mean they don't offer a wide range, but it gives them that expertise. And specific types of financial planning, insurance, things like that can come with specific certifications. So you are putting yourself out as you are an expert in this specific type. Again, it doesn't mean that you can't help your customers with all of their insurance or financial needs or whatever your industry is. By putting yourself out as an expert in a specific type, it gives you a way to differentiate yourself and draw people into your business.
Yeah, and one of the business type that I classify as really being similar, but in a lot of different ways, is nonprofit organizations. There are a lot of nonprofit organizations out there that are hurting a lot right now because they depend upon events and fundraisers and so on and so forth, which can't be done in person anymore. However, they're coming back a little bit, and so there's some really neat, innovative ways that things are happening. We have one right here, a couple in Connecticut, Food Share, which has just done an amazing job serving millions of pounds of food at Rentschler Field since the pandemic started. Every year they used to have a walk for hunger, and it was a one-day walk. I think last year it was a Dunkin' Donuts park. This year they have a week's event in September where you can go onto their website and actually just sign up a team and just do a walk anytime you want during the week. They have a whole week event where they're doing that, but you can still sponsor it, you can still get teams together and so on and so forth. It's a really innovative way of doing things. Another nonprofit in the area is the Ron Foley Foundation, which raises funds to cure pancreatic cancer. And we have a really good friend in the chamber who promotes that a lot. And every year they do a Run for the Roses party where they have a big party for the Kentucky Derby. And the Kentucky Derby is not in May this year. It's actually not coming up until next month. And what they're doing is they always have it at Flamick Farm, I think, over in Simsbury, or one of the places. And what they're doing this year is they're getting a big movie screen. They're going to have a drive-in for that. The cars are going to park there, but you're still able to buy tickets to sit out, I think, distance on the lawn, or you can watch it on Zoom and so on and so forth. And they're still going to have an online auction and so on. So they're just innovating different ways to still pull these things off. So, I mean, and there's also businesses that are rising right now to do fundraising online, like online bingo for fundraising and other things that you can do. So it's an opportunity for people who are developing those businesses. But for those of you who are nonprofits, it's a great opportunity for you to look into different ways to do that and really expand where you can draw funds from, because now instead of just being local, again, you have the whole world open to you via the internet.
Right. And you don't need to differentiate yourself all by yourself. With the changing situations, there are a lot of opportunities for businesses to partner with each other to create that differentiation. And a great example of that here in Connecticut, there is a performance venue in Milford. And because they can't get enough people under the current rules into their venue to be able to make a profit on a show. So what they've done is they partnered with a local mall. The mall has a whole area of their parking lot that's not being used because it used to be the parking lot for Sears, which has gone out of business. What they're doing is they're putting a stage up where Sears was, putting a a drive-in venue, so that people can come park their cars in the spots that are labeled. You can bring lawn chairs because they're using every other spot. The chairs are separated by the cars, so you've got the physical distancing plus a barrier, and they're having concerts there. And you can either be outside your car sitting on a lawn chair listening to the speaker system, or you can watch from inside your car, and they have an FM broadcast system, so you can turn your car radio to a specific frequency and listen to the concert that way. So it's a whole different, but it's adapting to what current conditions are. And that's really something you have to do. And you can do this by partnering with other businesses. You can do it on your own if you're capable of that. But finding these ways to stand out and differentiate yourself. There are so many entertainment venues that have just shut down because they don't have partnerships like this. This is one way that this venue stands out from all of their competitors, by partnering with a local mall.
Yeah, and what it goes back to is really the old school philosophy of relationships. The more win-win relationships you have, and that's what your strategic partners are, they're positive relationships. What networking is all about is developing those. And once you do, you have a whole network of people. Everybody that you know out there that knows about you is going to be willing to say positive things about you. And if you set that up strategically, where you're partnering with each other to do that, all of a sudden you can do a whole lot of good in a very, very short period of time just by sitting down and figuring it out. Again, it comes down to innovating your strategies as far as doing that too. Innovation is just a key word all the time as far as keeping one up on the competition. But these days, it's so important, and there's so many different things that you can consider these days. So it's intimidating, but in a lot of ways, I think it's a challenge and a lot of fun.
Sure. And speaking of relationships, that's something else that differentiates you. You can put together a process and your competitor can copy the process or copy a message. The one thing they can never copy is you and your relationship with your employees, your customers, your suppliers. Your personality is something that can't be copied. And that is something that absolutely differentiates you from your competitors. Be yourself. Show your true personality. By doing that, you create deeper relationships with your customers. They're not simply buying from you because they like what they're buying. They're buying from you because they like you. They trust you. They know you. And that relationship can't be duplicated by any, because there isn't another you. And never underestimate the power that has of being yourself and creating deep relationships.
Yeah, because those relationships, when people start talking positively about you, it gives you something that you can't buy, and that's credibility. And once you have that credibility, once you have that image out there, your competition could do as good as you as far as products and services and so on and so forth. But if you have that credibility out there, you're going to stay ahead of them. So that's what relationships lead to, especially when you are a giver in those relationships and helping everybody out. Because the bottom line is, the more that you give, the more things come back to you. But you have to be doing that unconditionally, and that gets out, and people realize that, and that makes people gravitate to you just because of how you do things.
Absolutely. And we've talked a lot on this podcast positive mindset. Well, that positive mindset can also set you apart. I have heard from tons of people describing relationships they have with businesses that they love going into a location because everybody's smiling, because people say hello. It may seem like a little thing, but by having that positive mindset and sharing it, again, giving somebody a smile, even though we're wearing masks now, when you smile, people can tell. You can see the mask move, you can see the sparkle in your eyes. So even though we're behind masks, it's still important to say hello, to smile, to be friendly. That brings people together and that creates relationships. People like going into restaurants, retail stores, offices, where the people there make them feel good.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
know, and Chip, you for years have used by Maya Angelou, and I'm going to let you say it because I know I will butcher it. But it's about how people make you feel.
Yeah, people will forget what you say, they'll forget what you do, but they'll never forget how you make them feel. And that's so important. And I mean, there's a lot of people out there that seem outwardly positive, but there's a lot of other people out there that seem outwardly negative and so on. And sometimes the people who are negative don't realize that the people who are positive have their downs also. I mean, I'm a positive guy. I have a lot of one-on-ones with people, and I talk about that all the time. And some of the most positive, fun people I've ever talked to, everybody's got a complex about themselves as far as how people feel about them and so on and so forth. And one of my favorite sayings is, what other people think about you is none of your business, because you can't control them. And for everybody out there, every single moment is an opportunity for you to be positive. I get people to crack up sometimes when I say, people, you either light up a room walking in or walking out. And the you can be that person that lights it up walking in just by choosing to do that. And the bottom line on that, I'm saying bottom line way too much, but this is a business show. However, if you are positive towards other people, you're going to attract them to you, and you are going to lift the spirits of people around you, and that's going to lift you up also. And all of a sudden, just by practicing it, you're going to become more positive. So no matter where you are right now, it is a choice to just the next moment go to the mirror, smile at yourself, and say, I'm going to have a good moment now. And not that everything's going to go away as far as negativity goes, but if you can strive and try to practice and make positivity more of a habit, watch out.
Exactly. All right, we're coming up on the end of our time. So, Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway that our listeners should have from this episode?
Now, as far as if you want to be one up on your competition, you have to be positive, number one. Um, but the things that we talked about today, I think it's really, really important to be innovative, kind of staying ahead of the curve there. And we talked a lot about relationships and partnerships, and it's just really, really important to do that. You've got to constantly be working on things and planning, evaluating, adjusting, and moving ahead now more than ever. But there's a whole lot of opportunity out there. So just realize that.
Yes, there is still a lot of opportunity. I think that's a remember. I think for me, the big takeaway is that there are so many ways you can differentiate yourself that it's absolutely ridiculous for a business not to try. You have to move forward as a business person and set yourself apart, stand away from rather than trying to fit in. Be yourself and let people see what you bring to your business. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at xvadio.com/podcasts. You can also find us on the Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. See you then.